Now this might be Arcane's biggest fumble. I've been putting off making this video ever since I saw the last episode of the last season of Arcane, and the reason was I didn't think there was going to be a lot of people who felt the way I did. But there's finally enough communal kickback about this character that we can talk about it and dive into the problem. Problem number one, and I'll be saying this lots of times in this video, Viktor is not a mage, or at least he wasn't. The old Viktor was fundamentally an inventor, and obviously there is a difference between these two things. He was someone who creates and uses machinations to do his bidding to get things done in Piltover. His work also included body augments like the ones we see on Savika and Smeech. Again, what we can see about Viktor in his previous form is that he is not a mage. But the mage aspect of Viktor might not even be the biggest problem here, because if we are honest about his in-game kit, as in the Viktor we see in League of Legends, that was due for an update anyway, and the best way to do this would be to give Viktor some sort of magical ability as well to somewhat augment what he already has. It would have been cool, because instead of just putting him in the inventor lane or the mage lane, he could have done both. However, the big problem with this change to Viktor is that he has lost his core identity as an inventor of machines of mass destruction. If I'm not mistaken, Viktor is even the one responsible for creating another character that we see in League of Legends called Blitzcrank. And the disappearance of Viktor from this role has me wondering how that character is ever going to show up in this universe in a manner that makes sense. I did say that this video would become a little bit repetitive as time goes on, but my main gripe with the new version of Viktor and what they've done with him is that there wasn't much wrong with his old concept to begin with. Maybe you can tweak the old design a bit, streamline a few parts of it, but there was no reason to turn him into this monster mage hybrid thing that he now is. And even if they did do that, turning him into a mage, you can still keep the core essence of what makes Viktor Viktor alive. He could have perfectly played the role of a Viktor Von Doom, which is where I think they got the concept for him anyway. He could have played that role for Runeterra. And what was cool with everything Viktor was doing up until episode 7.5 of episode 8 is that he could have just played the role of adding magic to those followers anyway. And then he could have hit them with bodily augments, robotics. He could have turned that cult into a robotic magic cult. But instead, what we got is these weird dolls that somewhat don't fit in with what we know Viktor for doing. Those aren't machines, they're just soulless dolls that he controls and he speaks through. Don't get me wrong here, it still would have been cool to have that aspect. We just needed Viktor to be the one making the dolls physically. He is a scientist, an inventor. It would have been dope. It would have been a new form of hex tech that would have been able to achieve, storytelling wise, everything they wanted to do anyway. You wouldn't have had to change the major plot points of Arcane, but in doing it this way, you could have kept the core essence of what Viktor is alive. I would say, if something's not broken, don't go out of your way to fix it.
Evolution has a destination, not to combat nature, but to supersede it. The final, glorious evolution.
Man, I've thought about this so many ways. Even with what League is doing, we'd be very upset if Ezreal suddenly became a control mage like Ryze and Brand, and then they changed his entire story and his look to fit that. It kind of wouldn't make sense. We like Ezreal with the glove that fires mystic shots. Another thing, for the most part, it looks like they haven't changed much of Viktor's core gameplay, which was the actual part of him that needed some love. That is what needed a few tweaks, and Arcane would have been such a cool bridge to do that, but they've somewhat just changed him without fixing the core problems with the character himself. I don't think Viktor isn't picked because he's not a popular design. I think he isn't played because his current gameplay is so mid that it takes a lot to really want to get into him and invest your time into this character. What would have been great to see is giving him a powerful item in game, like his Hex Core from Arcane. I know they've done this before with him, where you kind of buy upgrades from the store for his Hex Core, but I feel like what they could have done with buying upgrades is instead of it just being flat stats, the upgrades actually change the gameplay in an impactful way. Or maybe if you need to do more AoE damage, you can change the laser to go around Viktor instead and do damage in a circle. Stuff like that. Just small little tweaks that make his character a bit more fun and playable and give you meaningful choices in game. I think it's very powerful in every kind of game, every genre, to give your player base impactful decisions to make. Does this unit do well against this unit? Does this item counter this character? Etc, etc. The collection of problems I've described is probably why Viktor mains seem to be very outraged about the changing of the core identity of their character and the lack of concern for the actual problem, which seems to be his gameplay. But that's just my opinion. How do you guys feel about it? Let me know in the comments. This is Lois signing off. Peace.